Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 122C curved shaft string trimmer. Customer complaint is that he brought it out of storage, and now he can't get it running. So he said he had drained the tank last year and refilled it with fresh fuel this year. He never actually said that he ran the carburetor empty. He just said he emptied the tank. And the fuel does smell good. I believe that he did put fresh fuel in here. So let's see if we can get this thing to fire up. Take a look at what we got going on here first, though. I like to check things like the air filter and look in the cylinder before I do any kind of test run. So the air filter, it's not perfect, but it's not the reason that this thing won't start. We will take a look inside the cylinder and make sure it's clean and shiny and not scored. Now I'm going to look in here with an inspection camera. First look at this spark plug here. It's kind of carboned up. Looks like this thing's been running rich or maybe running on some bad fuel or something. But I'm going to use this inspection camera, and I realize that you're not going to get a good shot here of the screen. And in the future, I will make some efforts to improve this part of my videos. But right now, we're just going to have to deal with what we got here. Without even looking into the camera, you should know that it looks good in there. It's clean and shiny. And because I want to experience what he was experiencing, I'm going to put this spark plug back in here. It was carboned up pretty bad, but it should still run on that. We'll get this plug torqued down to spec and prime it up and see if it'll start. Seems like it's priming all right. Choke it. So that was 6 pulls that were pretty much dead. Prime it a little bit more and try again. Yeah, we're getting there. So what do you think's going on here? Yeah, it's not running too terrible right now. Let's take a look here. This is a 2019 model. I'm trying to decide right now, is this thing old enough that the metering diaphragm could be stiff? I don't know, that started pretty good. So when you get into projects like this, you have to decide, do I just make a carb adjustment and walk away from it? Do I dig into it a little bit deeper and rebuild the carburetor? Or maybe it's something in between. And in this case here, I use this more as a learning tool. I am familiar now with the symptoms that this is exhibiting. First it was hard starting, then it seemed to run okay with the carb adjustment. I want to look inside the carburetor now and see what there is to see and how that matches up to those symptoms. Is it because the metering diaphragm's stiff that I had to compensate for that with a carb adjustment? Is it because the fuel in the carburetor was still old because it was never drained or ran out last season, and we just needed to get some fresh fuel to roll through there and kind of clean it up a little bit? You know, if this thing would have sat for another 30 days or something, there's a fair chance that this would have been stripped down and completely cleaned out to make it run. Fortunately, taking the carburetor off of a 122C Husky is pretty easy. There was only a few bolts holding that base on there, the throttle cable and 2 fuel lines. So we're going to put this on our handy dandy carb stand and open it up and just see. And depending on what we see in here, we'll determine what route we take next. So there's 2 screws holding the fuel pump plate in place. There's going to be a micro screen behind here. And if it's plugged up with schmutz, then we know we found a problem, right? But in fact, it doesn't look too bad at all. Is there maybe a light coat of scum on there? I don't really think it was. It kind of initially looked like it could have been, but it can be deceiving when you're trying to determine if there's scum on those micro screens without actually pulling them out and looking at them through a light. I've had them where I thought they were kind of plugged up, and then once I got it out and all the liquid that was on them had kind of gone away, they were perfectly clean without me blowing them out. So you got to be careful of what you're looking at there. We're going to put this pump cover back on, and we're going to look at the other side of the carburetor, and we're going to look at the metering diaphragm. If it's stiff, you know, that could explain the situation. Opening up the high-speed jet to compensate for some lack of fuel feed, you know. It's possible. The gasket is definitely stuck on here pretty good. I want to carefully remove it because if the metering diaphragm is not stiff, I'm putting it right back together. And, you know, it's not bad. I don't believe it's the reason why this thing wasn't running right or why he couldn't get it started. It seems pliable enough that this thing should run decent. And in fact, I'm going to put it back together with this diaphragm. Now, a lot of people might say, well, you already got the thing off of there and you already got it apart. Well, that's true, but I'm more on a learning trip right now. I could have just adjusted this carb and shipped the thing. But I wanted to look in there and I wanted to associate the complaint with what I experienced with what I'm seeing in the carburetor. And all of that is going to just give me more experience, right? And I'm going to know next time. I'll have a better idea of what is going on. And I've been doing this for a long time, and it might seem a little weird that I still kind of experiment this way, but, you know, tune up every now and then don't hurt. So if I kind of just tune up my skills, why not? All right, we're going to put this carburetor back on the machine. I have to orient the gasket to the carburetor. I like to match it exactly the way it was in there before, just because I'm reusing the gasket. If it was a fresh one, I would just make sure that the impulse port was lined up, but you know, there's clues on those gaskets as to which way it was on there before, and putting it back the same way might prevent a leak. So there's just 2 screws that run through this air filter base through the carburetor. Our fuel lines go on a lot easier than they came off, that's for sure. Those hard plastic lines can be tricky to get off. You saw that earlier. Our throttle cable wire. This is going to fight me just a little bit, but we'll get it. So after I put this back together, we're going to fire it up and see how it runs. And then I'm going to make a few carburetor adjustments and just kind of play with it a little bit. And if I'm happy with the results, then we'll send it off to the customer. And then with all my repairs, unless they need it right away, I'll let them sit overnight and then cold start them in the morning, and there might even be another carburetor adjustment tomorrow, right? But if this thing runs all right, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 122C curved shaft string trimmer. I just didn't want to start for the customer when he brought it out of storage. Thanks for watching. Later. Oh yeah, I didn't have that choke lever quite in place there, so that's what was going on.